A judge just made the controversial decision to make that embarrassing video public. The singer first found naked and lying on a North Texas road in the middle of the night with a blood alcohol level nearly 3 times the legal limit, and repeatedly threatening the arresting officers with violence and even death. Beforehand, he'd reportedly tried to buy cigarettes at a convenience store, also in the nude. And I want to bring in defense attorney Jeff Gold to help me sort through this one. Are your civil rights violated when a videotape is made public? Because Joe Schmo's tape would be made public. Why shouldn't Randy Travis's be made public? And what's the difference for Joe Schmo being loaded and insulting and threatening police and Randy Travis doing it? Why does one get to say, well, hold on, this might be mental health and it might be a HIPAA violation?
Well, he's got money to sue. Average Joe would not sue in this circumstance at all, ever. What the police did is redact this video. They took out the medicines. They took out the things that could be HIPAA violations. They took out everything that could be objectionable, but they left in what the Sunshine Law, the Freedom of Information Act, requires, is that the public be made aware of these things unless there's a compelling interest. And just because he's a star and doesn't want to ruin his reputation is not enough. Yeah, and listen, notwithstanding, everyone who watches Randy Travis and sees him struggling with the after effects of a debilitating stroke feels very sorry for him. And that, I get it. I get it. Let's be clear again. This all happened prior to that, and the fight is happening while he appears in the condition he's in. And I'm going to actually, as we come up in the next hour, I want you to stick around. I want you to hear specifically how he threatened the police, because it wasn't just, I'm going to get you. It was specific. There were direct threats. I'm going to play the exact audio and the exact words that he used against that arresting officer, who, by the way, did not escalate that at all. You'll hear it in his own words. That's coming up in about 45 minutes, so don't go anywhere. Police have to take every call seriously, even if it's from overprotective parents worried about their teenage child. And the cops in Oklahoma felt the same way as they responded to the call from a dad who was wondering what his son was doing in a motel room in the city of Moore, Oklahoma, just south of Oklahoma City. And dad had every reason to be worried, too, very worried, because what was happening inside that motel room and who his son was with in that motel room was downright criminal. So I want to bring in Jeff Gold on this one as a defense attorney. I'm guessing that if this was your client, you'd say, bro, you got no escape. You're going to have to plead to this. And by the way, these are federal charges. They're very, very serious. Yeah, they're federal for a couple of reasons. One, it takes the conflict out of the state because he's a state senator. And then second of all, they're much more serious than the state charges. In a perfect world, he might try to say, and I think he was trying to say, oh, well, this may have been consensual and how old was he? But once you put in the federal charge of child trafficking, he's looking at substantial time in prison. Speaking of that, the maximum sentence is 10 years to life. And when everybody, oh, well, you're not going to serve that Brock Turner thing. And no, when it's federal, you actually almost serve all of it, correct? Well, no, he won't serve that time. They'll still You don't think he'll serve somewhere around 10? No, he won't serve life. No, he's going to get... But about 10? It's going to go under the guidelines, and he's going to get a substantial amount, but it won't be even 10. It's still a lot more federally than he would have got. I don't understand how it could be 10 years to life, but you can get less than 10. Because everything in the federal system goes under what are called the guidelines. And what you get sentenced to, you actually do. Yes, that is true. No That's parole. The issue. Once you get, yes. You're not going to get a lot of time off for good time. He will go away. Probably a good thing. Certainly out of politics. Thank Jesus. I'm sure the Trump people want him gone, too. Head of the campaign for that state. There's pictures of him with Don Jr. Well, we couldn't air them because he took them off his Facebook. The Trump administration is prosecuting him. Yeah. All right. Thank you for that, Jeffrey. Don't go anywhere. Last week, the police department in Tampa, Florida, had a major announcement to make. It had been national news. A suspected serial killer who took the lives of 4 people at random, shooting them dead on the streets there. And the police were finally going to make an arrest after weeks of hunting for them. The mother of one of those victims was reportedly in the crowd that night, relying on this woman, a sign language interpreter, to find out if there'd finally be some justice after her daughter's death. Only she could not understand what this lady was saying, because the sign language she was actually doing, it was complete gibberish. Defense attorney Jeff Gold is with me. So, you know, I wanted to say, I get it. It's not she hasn't broken any laws.
But what's the difference between her doing that and depriving someone of being able to hear that important news and someone taking the ramp away from a federal building and not letting anybody with a wheelchair access it?
Well, that may be criminal mischief. They're toying with federal property, but there are laws that say you can't pretend you're a lawyer, you can't pretend you're a nurse, a doctor, but and even a certified interpreter in court, for example, would be committing an offense. But here, it's just embarrassing.
Yeah, and mean. It's just
well,
mean,
I mean, the police quite often just say to the fella in the car next to you, "You speak Spanish?" And they use them. Well, that's sort of what they did here. It wasn't.
Backfired.
It was embarrassing.
Backfired. Don't go anywhere. All right, for all the Randy Travis fans out there and the folks who aren't and maybe don't know, a year after this happened, or the next year after this terrible videotape actually was recorded and this arrest was made and the profanity and the threats against the police, Randy Travis had a stroke. And it was not a small stroke. It was a near deadly stroke. And this is the condition that resulted. He was unable to walk. He was walking with help, with a stick, with a cane. He was unable to speak, unable to sing. He has been making his comeback and trying to regain his life. It is unknown if he will ever have the life that he used to have. And for that, there was a lot of sympathy for Randy Travis. But let's be very clear. What happened on that video was prior to any of these medical circumstances, prior to any near deadly stroke. And so the sympathy needs to be separated from the incident and the law. I want to bring in Darren Porcher, if I can, retired NYPD lieutenant and criminal justice expert. Jeff Gold is here with me as well, defense attorney. Darren, when you hear 60 rounds and I'm going to sick the mob on you, and you watch these guys and their restrained behavior, I wanted to get your initial thoughts.
Mr. Travis clearly escalated the situation. The officer was the avid professional. He in no way, shape, or form was hooked by Randy Travis's actions. But we have to take in consideration, although Randy Travis ran into a high-impact attenuator on the highway, there could have been someone that he could have injured and killed. Luckily, it was only himself. So it begs the question of, what is he doing as an individual to prevent these things from occurring? You mentioned he had this stroke a year or two later, but these acts took place prior to him having the stroke. So we need to focus and pinpoint on his actions prior to the stroke.
Listen, you could say drunk, funny, haha, but when you say these things and you say, I hope you get cancer so deep into your bones you die, and I'm going to unleash 60 rounds and bury you onto a farm and no one will ever find you, that's where the law kicks in. And that's where you get the charge felony retaliation. Now, it was dropped in favor of this plea deal for just misdemeanor DWI. Right. But he was also seated in the front seat. Tell me a little about, is that against the rules? Is that deference? Is that, listen, we're treating you real well, fella. What does it mean to see him in the front seat?
The procedural guidelines for police departments differ nationally. Traditionally, in the places in the South and the Midwest, they seat arrestees in the front seat. Whereas here in New York City, for example, we seat arrestees in the back seat. There are one-man patrols, and we look at this particular instance, this was a one-man patrol. So I guess it gave the officer a better line of sight towards Mr. Travis.
Speaking of one-man patrol, someone showed up. Another officer showed up. There's this quick piece of sound I want to throw to, if I can, where they just kind of figure out, hey, that's Randy Travis. And I just want, listen to the realization. Listen to the sort of the feeling that they have. They can't believe it.
Exactly.
Have a listen to this.
I want to prepare you for something.
Okay.
The naked man sitting on the back of the fire truck. Randy Travis.
Let me ask you something, and be really, really honest with me. Does it make a difference to the metric of how things play out, how you treat someone when you realize you got a big one? You got one that's likely going to go public. You know these videos will likely go public. Does anything change in the policing at all when all of a sudden a Mel Gibson, a Paris Hilton, a Randy Travis, a Tiger Woods shows up on your cam?
I've arrested several high-profile citizens, but at the same token, I treat them just like the common citizen. And that's the way these officers should deal with Randy Travis moving forward.
Should is one thing, sir. What really happens? Do they worry and they do things more by the book? Do they give them a break because, oh, dear God, this poor guy, he's not going to get the same treatment that Joe Schmo is going to get. He's going to end up all over the news. Joe Schmo could go to work the next day and no one will know about this. But Randy Travis's career could be over, and I'm the guy doing it. Does that make a difference to him?
Remember, this was on a body cam, so everyone can see it. Therefore, the officers are going to do what's necessary based on their procedural guidelines.
They're going to cross every T and dot every I because they know that video's going
Body
out.
cam has changed policing.
Well, and listen, it took 5 years, Jeffrey. It took 5 years for that video to be made public because of the pitched battle that the family fought. They suggested all sorts of things like civil rights violations if you release that video. They sued the Texas administration, the Attorney General, the Department of Public Safety, saying you can't release that tape. And those of us in the sunshine world who say public is public said no, and we won. The public won.
Yeah, I mean, look, they just wanted to save his reputation as much as they can. But I disagree. The officer knew that this tape was coming out and would be on TV, and he acted totally appropriately. But remember, Randy Travis had a head injury. And I think he was obstreperous, probably because of that, as well as this. That's probably what happened.
There's some argument there.
They just didn't want this to come out. They fought as hard as they can because they had the money to do it. Most people don't.
Yeah. Well, it's out, and I think it's sometimes people say this is the kind of thing that saves their lives. Sometimes people say this is the kind of thing that can save other people's lives, because when you see that, you don't want to be that. Guys, thank you so much. Appreciate it.